Hi friends. So after discussing about the different theories of economics which are simply basic about the economy, and I want to tell you the other things, simply they are the basics of economy. And remember that I am making these videos thinking that the one who doesn't know anything about economy also should benefit from my videos. So some very small basics will also be included here. So if you know them, be patient and go through the videos because all should benefit from here. So I am discussing the other basics of economy so that the one who doesn't know anything about economy also should benefit. Now here I want to discuss with you about the basics of economics, market, which includes some supply and demand. Simply, a market is, if we want to define it in the most official terminology, it is an organization or an institution where some interaction will take place between a buyer as well as a seller. And keep it in mind, it is not necessary that this definition of market is a physical definition. Any place, either it is through an internet also, if the interaction was between the buyer as well as seller, then simply it is a market. Whether it is a physically designed market or it is through some phone or it is through some internet communication, whatever it may be, an interaction between a buyer and seller is nothing but a market. Such market consists of two important things. Simply we can say them as factors. They are supply and demand. The market just revolves around these two factors only. What is a supply and what is a demand? First, I want to define what is a demand. Then I will explain you what is a supply. What is a demand? Simply here, demand means nothing but wanting for one good or a service. Simply, just consider me as a individual in a society. So I would like to have some good or a service. So that necessity from my side is nothing but demand. Then if one has to profit, one has to get profited from my demand, means from my necessity. If someone wants to get profit, then he will try to produce that good and supply that good to me and thus fulfill my necessity and get profit by selling that good or service to me. That is nothing but supply and demand. So demand is from an individual who is seeking to fulfill his necessity. Supply is from another individual who is trying to get profit from one's necessity. So obviously demand will be from buyers and supply will be from the sellers. So such an interaction existing between a buyer and seller is nothing but the market. Now here, many factors will involve in the market mechanism. What are they? That is, these supply and demand factors mostly involve depending upon the behavior of the individuals in the society. Simply, behavior of individuals in the society means, here I want to redefine this behavior as necessity of the individuals depending upon the circumstances existing in their society. For example, consider me as an engineer. So as an engineer, if I want to repair some machine, I need some tools, but I am an engineer, not a tools manufacturer. Okay, so obviously I need some tools. Then I am having or I am creating some demand in the market for tools from my side. So someone who is producing the tools will contact me. So I am creating some demand for tools, but I can't create some demand for any other product which will never relate with my life or with my what we call profession. So either with my life or with my profession, it should have some relation. Then only I can create some demand. For example, I cannot create a demand for a land. Means If at all I am having a house, what is the necessity of having one more land? If I think I want to have some wealth in the form of land, then I will go for it. If not, just I am thinking as an engineer, I don't need a land. So some real estate fellow will try to buy a land. So depending upon the circumstances, the demand will exist. So that behavior of an individual depends upon the circumstances he is having and his life, etc., etc., and the society that is surrounding him. So I can give you an example, that is, take a village, and in this village farmers and some other craftsmen will be there. So in this village, the demand for fertilizers because of farmers, the demand for some raw material like wood for craftsmen will exist. But here there will not be any demand for a pub or a club, because the civilization of village is not such developed. So the demand will be only for these two things and the resources which are necessary for these two persons. So in this way, behavior definitely affects the market. Simply behavior of individuals in that market will affect the market. Now, so you understood how the behavior of an individual will affect the market. In the sense, first it will affect the demand, then it will in turn affect the supply. So thus, interaction is very necessary, and this interaction will lead to the production of a good and the selling of the good, thus creating some income. Here now we have to know one thing. For production, simply making some good. Production means nothing but making some good. To make some good, definitely you need some resources. Resources in the sense, for a while I am using this word resources for raw materials. So for making any good or for making any service, you need some resources, simply raw materials. These resources will be available in every society, but sometimes these resources may be scarcely available. Then with the just available resources, you need to fulfill the wishes which are related with these resources. Simply just think about a land. Land is necessary for building a house. At the same time, land is necessary also for farming. So now, depending upon the choices you are having and the maximum necessity you need, you should choose between either use the land for farming or use the land for building the house. So this choice of making use of available resources is very necessary, and it is the problem almost all the economies are facing. Simply to decide between the allocation of resources for what purpose of production to use those resources. Simply to use the resources available for the production which is having the maximum necessity. And moreover, you should think very intelligently between this issue. Sometimes you may think the production 1, for the production 1 I need these resources. So you may use all the resources for production 1. Okay, now you fulfill your wish. But in the latter stage, if the economy needs some another good which will be produced through the production 2, from where do you get the resources? So a combination of producing the good or services with the resources which are available is a good mechanism. Usually the economies will follow. Means if the resources that are available are 10 units, with this 10 units of resources, you can produce 2 types of goods or services, whatever it may be, A and B. Then, at present, you may have the maximum necessity of A, but in the future, you may need to think about B also. Then, if you are using the available resources, I mean 10 units of available resources to only A, what about B in the future? So what you need to do, depending upon the maximum necessity you need with A and the future necessity that you have to meet with B, and how much production of A can be done with the 10 units. For example, using the 10 units, if you can produce some 20 units of A, so 10 units will give rise to a maximum of 20 units. But if you want to make a combination of production, both A and B with these 10 units, you have to analyze it in one way. If you are able to make the 20 units of A, not only by totally using the 10 units, but merely by using some 7 units of resources, if you are able to make the 20 units of A, if you are able to make the 20 units of A, then you should use the remaining 3 units for the making of this unit B. So what happens? Out of making 20 units of A with 10 units of resources, you are wasting 3 units of resources. But if you use the 7 units to make the maximum 20 units, which you can make with the 10 units also, so 7 units will be used for A and the remaining 3 units will be used for B. This is what called as choice of making combination of production of either goods or resources, which is very important for managing or maintaining the allocation of resources. So here you understood that allocation of resources is also an important factor which will definitely influence the market. So now we have learned two things. One is what actually the market will have, what is a market, and the other thing, what are the influences in market, like behavior of individual, and the other thing is allocation of resources. Almost these three are the important factors of an economy. Simply market economy, we call it as a market economy. Any economy in which the market is playing a key role is known as market economy. Then is there any economy which is not directly dependent on a market? Actually, I must say no, but there are some possibilities with some limitations. That is, actually without a market, no economy can exist. But here I am saying other than the market economy, which means the maximum influence of market is limited in some economies. They are simply some socialist economies, which means in a socialist economy, rather than the market playing a key role, it is the necessity that plays the key role. So in order to fulfill that necessity, sometimes the government itself will involve in the issue and produce the good or make some arrangements for the production of that good. So if the government itself is directly involving, it will look to fulfill the necessities of the public. So here market may not play a vital role just like the market economy. So there are some economies, we call them as centrally, simply they are centrally authorized economies or centrally controlled economies. Such centrally controlled economies will give a minimal involvement for the markets, whereas in market economy, totally the market will control the system. Of course, sometimes if the government feels necessary, then the government may involve, but the role of government will be minimal in a market economy, and in such market economy, these are the key factors which are going to influence that market. Then apart from this, we have to learn some more concepts. Let us see what are those concepts. Simply they are one way related to this allocation allocation of resources. How? Here, allocation of resources is defining or deciding the production of a good or service. So, I already told you just before that combination of making goods and services with the available resources or with the available allocation of resources. Then here we have to learn one more thing, that is production possibility. What is this production possibility? What is this production possibility? Here, production possibility means simply what is the maximum level of production. What is the maximum level of production with the resources which are allocated or available, whatever it may be. Actually, when the resources are available, we do some allocations. So with the allocation of the resources, what is the maximum possibilities of production for two goods or whatever it may be, number of goods also acceptable, but definitely it should have some combination. Means you are not supported to use the allocated resources for the production of a single good or a single service. No, here simply the combination of goods or services, production of combination of goods or services with the resources which are allocated, that is nothing but the production possibility. For example, consider some three products. There are some A, B, C are the three products. Then here for these three products A, B, C or services A, B, C, how to define this production possibility? That is with the available resources, that is with the available allocation of resources. Just now I explained you some 10. How many resources can be used for the maximum production of A, B and C is nothing but the production possibility. When we are defining it for some 3, 2 or 4 or more goods or services, we call it is also production possibility set. Production possibility set. When we are using this production possibility for 2, 3 or more number of goods and services, then we will call it as production possibility set. Simply with the maximum use of allocated resources, what is the maximum amount of the production of these three goods or services is nothing but the production possibility. Remember, here we should try to use the fuller use of resources and no question of wasting the allocated resources. That will fetch the maximum use or maximum fuller use of the resources. We have to discuss furthermore about this maximum fuller use of resources and this production possibility, which will be discussed in the next class.